All right, there it is. There it is. All right, what's going on, world? It's kind of crazy because, you know, whether it was my friends telling me this or some other people, man, it's really interesting because they talk about how a lot of times the vertical content is less professional than the horizontal. But, piece of me can kind of care less. I mean, what we're going to tap into right now is TTH 2001. I said 2001, 201. You know what I'm saying? We got the dry erase markers right here, making shit real official. I told you, man, we're gonna do some real official stuff. Whatever that looks like, however that looks, man, we're really gonna make it happen. I found a little space, I found a little section. We're gonna make this happen right here. Here we go, man. Matter of fact, and to tell the truth, I've done a couple of trial and errors here and there. I did about at least 2 joints that were a form of trial and error. But right now, we're gonna keep it real professional right here. Like I said, man, let me explain it like this. Sometimes, man, we be in these university spaces. You gotta understand something. We be in these university spaces, whether you feel accepted by them universities or not. You understand? I mean, the university itself, the college itself could accept you. That's one thing. But sometimes you'll be there. People will spend about a year and a half. Some people spend about 6 months or a few weeks, and they'll figure out that it's not the place for them necessarily. But they're happy that they got accepted in the first place because they were accepted based off of a resume, if you will. You know what I'm saying? There's a resume that they had. It was something that they were really good at their grades. They were really good at memorizing certain things. They excelled. They had certain things on their resume, right? So they got accepted. The same thing goes for a job. But let's talk about the university mindset here, man. I want to speak about the university mindset because I, for one, have never been enrolled at a university. But my thing is this, man. A lot of people I know that go to universities will sit there, they'll get enrolled. Some people don't have much direction, but other people, they're over there trying to get some form of certification or some form of degree. Now, I'm not necessarily mad at that. I know some people that are getting their way through college paid, and they should take advantage of it. Hopefully, they do. Point I'm making is this, man. Let's write this down. University mindset, and I don't know where this is gonna go because, like I said, I wrote it down a while ago, man. I wrote that down a while ago, man. I had it in the notebook over here. Matter of fact, let me grab that while we're at it. Let me tell you something, man. Even though I'm off screen, university mindset is really interesting because the thing about it is, people are looking for certifications. People are looking for degrees that validate them. Like I said, I ain't mad at either of it. Here's the point I'm making right here. Check this out. Boom, had it already. Ended up pushing it into the future. But we got a couple things here, man. University mindset. Make sure I have my notes on me. You know what I'm saying? Make sure everything's documented the way it needs to be. On the other hand, nobody knows the degree of things that you've been through in life, the degree of things, the threshold of things that you can understand, or the threshold of things, the degree and threshold of things that you can understand and that you can handle. You know what I'm saying? There's a certain level of pain and even agony, mental agony, spiritual agony, things along those lines. Probably even physical if you've dealt with that form of, if you've dealt with or survived that form of abuse. The point I'm making is no one understands the degree of that. You're validated in that sense. And it doesn't take, you know what I'm saying? I heard this before. I think it was Kevin Gates that said he went to college to get a certain degree just to find out we knew everything all along. We had the answers all along. It just kind of, it sucks that you have to pay to revalidate yourself. You understand? You yourself are certified. You certainly went through certain things. You know what I mean? This isn't to be cheesy, man. It's just to be honest about it. We're not trying to be cheesy here. We just got to be honest about it, man. When I talk about the university mindset, I'm talking about everywhere I go, I carry the validation within me. You understand what I'm saying, bro? Everywhere I go, I carry that validation within me, man. I don't sit there and allow any form of scholastic teaching, and a lot of these scholastic teachings have nothing to do with my culture or anything historically within my culture or the islands I come from, or at least my people. You know what I'm saying? And that goes for a lot of people as well. These are weird standards that were set in place, constantly refined by people who are not necessarily put in situations, but have a safety net, if not a safe place to study and understand things rather than understanding things on the job. I say this as someone where it's like, you gotta think about it like this, man. Some people look down on the blue collar worker. Some people look down on the person that's over here doing, the construction or the whatever. And it's just like, these are jobs that have a certain level of physical labor. You understand? They have a certain level of physical labor and putting the body at risk. Those people understand what it is to go in day out, 8 hours at a time, sometimes even more, just to get somewhere. Some of these people struggling really hard just to commute from point A to B, sneak those meals in, and even worse, trying to sneak in time to sleep and get like proper rest for the body. So they know what that is. You can't tell me that they're not certified in understanding something that a lot of other people don't, who stick to keeping their nose in books. And this is no knock to anybody. This is no knock to anybody. This is just understanding the differences of, like, yes, you might be someone who is scholastically smart. You might be someone who went through the trenches of just going to work and even being a really righteous person. You might have been in the trenches of having to do a lot of negative things, just trying to get out of it and then finally live a positive life. Some people got to do what they have to do to survive in regards of like crime and things like that. All of these are different, how could you say, schools of thought. There's different forms of schools, if not the school of hard knocks. Some people come from different schools of thought, and they have different degrees and thresholds, excuse me, of handling these situations. You know what I mean? That's not to say, I know a couple of people that have been in college. They're real nice with the books, straight A students, and they know how to handle themselves on the street. There's different degrees of that as well. You understand? So when I say degrees, that's kind of what I mean. That's kind of what I'm insinuating here. A lot of different people that handle different things. There's some people that are over here that all they know is street stuff, but then they'll sit there and memorize things all damn day. If they ain't nice with the math, they sit there and talk about history with you all day, but he knows how to flip crack. People be like that, man. It's crazy. I've seen it. I've seen drug dealers that sit there and they can sit there and tell you history and certain years and certain dates and certain figures in those history places without the book in front of them, is what I'm trying to say. There's different degrees of people's memorization skills, things that they thrive in. And, one of the things I wanted to talk about, matter of fact, let's get into right here, man, because university mindset, the whole point I'm trying to make is like, just make sure for sure that wherever you go, you carry that with you. You validate yourself. You certify yourself. You yourself understand the degrees of this. What I really wanted to tap into. Oh yeah, my bad. Forgot all about this, man. First note I wanted to tap into right here. Let me keep the notes right here. That's a lot easier. Things are gonna be a lot more manageable. I wanted to discuss being enough. A lot of people don't. I don't know, man. They wrestle with themselves about whether or not they're being enough. Being enough. Welcome, man. This is the Truancy Hour 201. You already know what it is. I told you I was gonna do something more professional, bro. And it's looking like this. Hey, man. What's being enough mean, man? You don't feel like you're enough of something. You feel like you're not full. You feel like you're not whole. You feel like you're a piece of something. Some people might even feel as low as being a piece of shit. It's like that sometimes, man. A piece of shit real low. You understand? But even that serves a purpose, to fertilize the earth. You know what I'm saying? That serves a purpose. That fertilizes the earth. That helps the soil out a little bit. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. I mean, a lot of vegan and vegetarian people, the stuff that they enjoy eating comes straight from the soil. And that soil is nurtured from certain forms of mulch and shit. Let's be honest about it. So no matter how you feel about yourself, you provide something and you are worth something. Now, when it comes down to being enough, you got to ask yourself a couple questions. Like, what does that mean to you? You want to be enough of what? Certain people have certain limits, man. You hit a certain age, somewhere between 18 and 25, you're going to stop growing in height. I've been the same height since about 12, 13 years old. I've been 5'5" my whole damn life since about then. Shit, I heard you can get the surgery to, sit there, add a little height to the shins or the knees or something like that. I don't know if you want to do all that, but it's something you can do. It's available. But you would only do that in response to not feeling like you were enough, like you weren't something. So you got to ask yourself, why would you want to add these certain things to yourself? If not do something to yourself, augment your own well-being just to achieve something that you could have just very well, like I said, deep down inside, just felt certified for who you are, feeling perfect in who you are. Let me talk about this a little bit, man. It's really easy, man. We're going to say this. We're going to start with your strengths. You're going to start with your strengths, man. It's all going to come full circle. You should start with your strengths all the time. You know, I'm going to tell you something, man. Before I started boxing, I just knew I was right-handed. So, like, I knew I had to throw the right hook on somebody. I just knew that. Like, as a kid, I was like, yeah, I just know when I get in there, I'm going to have to throw that right hook. And I was watching Roy Jones a lot. I'm thinking about right hook, but the whole time he's throwing his left. He's right-handed, but he's throwing that left hook 3-4 times. So we start reading between the lines, someone who's refined and someone who actually works on themselves. In boxing, you lead with the side less dominant, and you load up with the side. You know what I'm saying? Left would be in the front, right up back here, and you line them up with the right. You set them up with the trap. If you were to do Jeet Kune Do, shout out to all my gurus. Shout out to Guru Mike. Shout out to Guru D, Guru James, Guru Ray. Shout out to my gurus. If you're talking about Jeet Kune Do, you know what I'm saying? Jeet Kune Do, JKD, Bruce Lee, he led with his strengths. He led with the right. The right is the strongest. You lead with the strongest. You know what I'm saying? You lead with the strongest. Ain't got time to be sitting here tit for tat trying to figure out the opponent, figuring out, you know what I'm saying? If you're an unrefined individual, that's what's built for you. You got to remember that. You're not there yet. You can't sacrifice your offhand to be in the lead. But I will say start with your strengths. For those people that are wondering, you have two options. You could sit there and go the hard path if you want to. You understand? You can lean into your weaknesses, which is fair. I'm not mad at that. You know, ever since I was a kid, I used my left hand for everything. I would lift everything with my left hand. I could do everything with my left hand except maybe write a signature. I could barely write with my left. I can use chopsticks. I can brush my teeth with my left. But I would always work on my weaknesses. Some people feel real down in the dumps about themselves. There's not really anything they could do to climb out of that. But like I said, figure out what your strengths are. Really think about it. I can't answer that for you. You know better than I do. But I would say lean into your strengths and go there. That's very important. Lean into your strengths. Now, before we get into that, let me get into my third point on being enough. The importance of training and working on weaknesses. Now, this goes back to what I was saying a while ago. You understand? Let me explain like this. I explained it already in a different video, but I'm not going to use that video. I wanted to use this because I enjoyed the actual setting. I finally got a whiteboard with some dry erase markers and all that. I don't know if the eraser is going to work, so we have the spray. We got the spray and the little towel on the side. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I don't know. The importance of training, working on the weaknesses, man. Let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about it just a little bit. All right, let's think about this real quick. You know, I've always argued that the purest forms of hip hop are things that you would not see or are not documented. You might have been there, you might have seen it, but it was undocumented. Those old, you know what I'm saying, parties, sound clashes, those battles that they used to have in the Bronx or whatever, there weren't necessarily cameras at the time to document it. There might be audio recordings, possibly, but that'd be very rare. And the point I'm making is that that was the purest form of hip hop. It was undocumented. You understand? The purest form of battling. I've been at certain shows. Shout out to the upstairs. RIP to the upstairs. That shit gone. But the upstairs used to have some of these dudes like Rocket out there. He would just battle everybody. He'd be in the cipher just staying in there, barred up the whole night. He's just dropping bars the whole night. He got an endless clip, and he's making shit on the spot, and he got the whole clip memorized. He's one of those type of rappers, but nobody had the cameras and the phones out and shit, and he's just rapping the whole night. Shit was undocumented. You understand what I'm trying to say? DJs, before you get a chance to see a DJ set, this dude is sitting here practicing at the house. He's got a little space that he might be practicing at. He's working on his little speakers. He probably got the shit in the X formation to get the sound right. He does that stuff in the dark. He's training. He's working on his weaknesses. He's trying to figure it out. And then when it comes down to doing the live show that night, he's going based off of the feeling and the people in the room. He's reading that. That's a whole other thing about that element. That's the DJ element. That's a whole another beautiful thing. Graffiti writers, same thing. Graffiti writers, very same thing. Before they're out there hitting publicly the walls and doing all the graffiti and bombing and shit like that. They're working in the black book. They have a little space where they could, they have a little space or like a free wall that's away from everything, and they just work on things. They just work on the craft before they go out there and do the big piece. Break dancers, before you see the break dancers battle, what do? Sometimes they're at certain places where they can practice, or sometimes they're in someone else's yard. Or, I got a friend, this dude used to go visit his old high school, sit around the little plaza area, and he would just sit there and practice by himself because he just needed to free his soul. He just needed to dance. But these are all little practice things that went into him when he actually showed up for battles in different cities. The point I'm making is like there's different ways you can look at it. I use those four elements because it's like, excuse me, those four elements of hip hop specifically, because when it comes down to the come down, whether you're someone who's going to be presenting your art or presenting yourself in a certain way, you might want to work on yourself in the background. This goes back to working on the left if you're right-handed. That goes back to a little bit of that. There's nothing wrong with working on yourself in the background in the darkness. There's nothing wrong with going out there, testing it, figuring out what you need to do, and then coming back. When we used to box, man, we would spar for like a good 30 minutes to an hour. Just sit there in rotation, trying out different opponents. For me, it was all about pulling back on the power against certain opponents. Some people would ask me like, "Hey, go as fast as you can, do the most speed that you can against me, hit me as hard as you can." To be those guys that'd be like damn near middleweight, cruiserweight kind of weight. Motherfuckers be 5'8" to 6'1" between those heights. And I'm over here just like a little scrawny kid fighting at 110, 115. And like, hey, use all your speed, use all your power, just hit me the hardest, all that. I'm over here working on everything, and they're working on dealing with someone quicker than them, trying to get their reflexes just as sharp as mine. But that's what it is. Sometimes you meet with people that'll help you in the sense that steel sharpens steel. So if you have a good friend group, if you have some reliable people around you, find something that you guys kind of correlate with, and then work on that. There's nothing wrong with that. Just work on that. You know what I'm trying to say? So just work on that. You can work on your weaknesses together with people, as long as you can trust that this person doesn't necessarily expose your weakness, but they expose it in training or they expose it in practice, so that way you can get better. You understand? A lot of that stuff works in the gym. Like, some people would just do all the work in the gym, and then when it's time to go to the fights, they figure out if everything paid off. After the fight, win, lose, or draw, you just sit there, go back to the drawing board. Yeah, I might have won the fight. Okay, I cracked this dude's nose. I say that all the time. I had 5 amateur fights. I was 2-3 when I was in 7th grade. But at the end of all my amateur fights, everybody had a cracked nose. Everybody had their nose bleeding. I was confused. I'm like, how did I lose 3 fights if every fight, like, I'm doing okay, but these motherfuckers got bleeding faces and shit like that. Their heads is ringing. I'm over here clocking them the hardest, but it's all about points. So you go back to the drawing board. Like, okay, yeah, you was going head up with them. You were throwing hands with them. You was in the pocket with them, but you took way more shots than necessary, even though you were beating the shit out of them. Go back to the drawing board. Figure out what the rules are. Work around that. You're not good working within the rule set. That's a weakness. Work on it. Get better at hitting and not getting hit. That's what it is. That's the name of the game for boxing. It ain't no game. You don't play in there either. That's the name of the game. Hit and don't get hit. Refine yourself. Create a sense of perfection. You know what I mean? You think about that too, man. People who design clothes, man, before the shit really gets sewed up and whatever created, before they even create it, they sit there and they doodle it out. They even think about the fabric. They think about the waist size. They think about who it may or may not fit, the height of the certain person. They sit there. They measure twice before, boom, doing what they got to do. These are all things you got to think about, man. So when it comes down to being enough, what am I trying to say, man? You got to lead with your strengths. You understand? When you start figuring out what your strengths are, you realize that you are something. Something is better than nothing if you think about it, man. Because you could not be existent. You could not be existent, or you could be a stepping stone for somebody, man. Some people really don't feel like enough, but here's the thing. Once you start figuring out what your strengths are, you'll know. You concentrate on your weaknesses too much. Even if you concentrate on the weaknesses too much, that's something to work on. You understand what I'm trying to say? You sit there, you have these weaknesses that you over here focusing on, like, damn, this is what makes me weak. Am I always lose? This is my weakness. All right, isn't that wrong with just staying on top of it? Anybody who's watched me do a live gameplay, I was playing Silk Song. I was playing all these games. If you watch my videos, man, I'll sit there, I'll die at the same boss for an hour. Someone who's really gaming or someone who's on a higher level than me, that's a failure to them, but to me, it's a W because I got to keep trying. I'm weak in this department because I want to go head up in Silk Song. You got to sit there, dodge, stick, and move. And I'm over here like, okay, I see why I'm losing. I got to just keep refining it. It takes me an hour to figure it out. Some people, it takes them like 5 minutes or one try. I'm just not on that level. That's a weakness. I got to delve into it. I don't dwell in it too much. I don't define myself based on it. Does that make sense? I don't define myself based off of those failures and weaknesses. But I will lean into my strengths because my strength is as much as I fail, I will keep trying. That's just me. You might not be like me, but like I said, find your strengths and lean into that before you start focusing on the weaknesses. And then we'll start going from there. That's for anybody that's over here stressing about being enough. That was one of my topics I had written down. Like I said, man, we did I ain't gonna say we, but I had did, this episode about 2 times before deciding on creating this one. So this one came out of a different type of necessity, if not a different type of energy. So like I said, we got the whiteboard. We're making it real professional off the 201. But this is a two-parter, just so you know. This is actually a two-parter, but I'm trying to refine it as much as possible. Like I say, man, I got the little joint written down, and I'm about to just sit there and expound on it slowly. Make it the best version it can be. All right, what am I trying to say, bro? My bad. The second part is this: being happy with yourself, man. People really think, that's a whole nother. Like I said, man, we're gonna bring this real full circle with you, man. Let's make it real full circle. Hold on. So being enough, and what I say, being happy with yourself. Boom. Being happy. Oh shoot! All right, here we go. With yourself. I don't know how well that's gonna translate through the camera. Let me zoom in myself, make sure it's going through. It looks like it's right there. Being happy with yourself. All right, man. That's a tricky one, man, because I spent a long time damn near looking down on myself and then feeling like every time somebody fed me a compliment, gave me some positive feedback, that I wasn't necessarily supposed to accept it. Now, it was tough because at the time it just felt like people who were complimenting me or trying to make me feel good about myself just wanted to use me. I never necessarily went through any like physical, well, I went through physical abuse, excuse me, but like no sexual abuse, no kind of like whatever. I never went through none of that shit. So I can imagine it's worse in the mind of someone who has that trauma within their body, if not that trauma is still lingering within their mind and spirit. And God bless them, because I hope to get through that, man. But you know, I don't necessarily have that. So mine came from a different type of place. You know what I'm saying? A different type of, the way I was nurtured was not necessarily positive, I would say. It's the best thing I could ask for. It's the best thing that I could ask for. But I also had to look at like, if I get into the specifics, it's like it wasn't perfect, obviously. Obviously it wasn't perfect, but it was just like it was a very tough way of living. You know what I mean? It was a way of like toughening me up. And at some point I was like, man, this ain't even doable, man. I see a lot of people that struggle with themselves simply staying within that, same tough mentality of toughing it out through life. Because you get through life in the younger years and then you start actually attaining power within the body and mind. And then you start abusing it against other people and it creates a cycle. So you got to be careful with that. But that's why I say it's tricky because, when it comes down to being happy with yourself, I want to, boom, let's get right into the second joint right here. Oh, my bad. I skipped something. This is the second joint. So being happy with yourself, I said, you aren't what you've been told about yourself from others. You are not what you've been told about yourself from others. You got to really think about that. Someone might say something true about you all day. Someone might sit there and point out your astrology, like, oh shoot, you born in whoopty wop, you born at the end of June, you a Cancer, so you this type of way, you this type of person. That motherfuckers sit there and try to define you based off astrology. And I'm gonna tell you something. I like astrology. I actually like astrocartography. I like what do you call this? When you get deep into the astrological charts, I'm into that stuff. But I would never sit there and define someone off of it. I might look at the faults of it. I might even look at certain signs and be like, this is probably where they struggle. But I'll never sit there and create like an absolute statement like this person is fucked up because they're an Aquarius, Gemini, all that bullshit. I don't get into that shit. You know what I'm saying? I think that there's things that they can work on necessarily. This goes back to weaknesses and strengths. But I would never necessarily sit there and absolutely define somebody based off of some astrology. I always joked around and said astrology is basically racism for people who don't want to admit that they're racist. They need to find something about somebody and have a judgment call about them. It's like that sometimes, bro. It's really like that. I be seeing that a lot. People be hating on Gemini's or whatever. People are like, oh, this person is Sag, man. I ain't fucking with them. Like all this goofy shit. And it's just like when you really think about it, when it comes down to racism, it's like you're gonna hate on somebody because they were born a certain way that they couldn't necessarily control. You know what I'm saying? They born with a certain type of hair, a color, hair texture. You know what I'm saying? A certain type of height, bone structure. You know, you're mad at people because they were born or blessed with a certain type of attribute that just happens within that specific race and culture. They can't control it. They just born that way. And here's the other thing: you're gonna be mad at somebody. You're gonna hate on somebody because they were born on a certain day of the week or a certain time of the month. They couldn't control that, except for the people that were kind of born. There's some kids that were born prematurely. They was like, "Yo, man, I'm trying to get out of the womb right now." They was ready to kick that joint out. You know what I'm saying? They over here just kicking, boop. They're kicking on the womb trying to get out. Those are probably the only kids that probably was like, "Hey, man, I'm trying to be born right now. I ain't trying to wait no damn 9, 8 months. I'm trying to get out 6, 7, shit like that." That's probably what they thinking about. I don't know. But again, that's the whole thing. It's like we can't necessarily control necessarily the day that we're born. It might be ordained by the universe. People think about shit like that. Some people believe in that shit. It is what it is. Whatever, man. I don't know if I don't know if I subscribe or adhere to that personally. I couldn't tell you whether I do or not. That's what I'm saying, man. People will sit there and try to define you based off of certain things about yourself. They'll look at your clothes. They'll see how your shoes are. It'll be all these little psychological stuff that they learn from watching a CIA agent on YouTube. They'll sit there and watch that shit and be like, oh yeah, I think I understand mind tricks now. And I can sit there and define people based off of the scuffs on their shoes, how they move, and people be thinking that they're on some case closed Conan. What the fuck is his name? Conan, the kid off Case Closed and Scooby Doo type shit. They're over here defining you based off of just looking at your little tendencies and stuff. Because people will sit there and define you and sit there and try to figure you out based off of that, but they won't try to help you. So what does that say about them? They got a whole lot to say about you, but they can't even sit there and define themselves like that. But they got a whole lot to say about you. They got a whole lot of observations to say based off of this shit that they, boom, whatever, off of you. Could barely do it for themselves. They need somebody else to do it for them. That's also why, back to who heals the healers, who therapeuticizes. I said therapeuticize. I don't even know if that's a word. Who gives the therapy to the therapist? It's shit like that. You know what I'm saying? Who helps the helpers, basically? Who heals the healers? Who helps the helpers? That's another thing about it, man. That's another thing about it, man. But let me talk about that second part of part two, where I'm basically saying you can be whoever you want to be. Remember that, man. I had people defining me since I was a kid, talking about he's an angry kid, he's a crash out, boop bop, boop bop. Man, my mom and dad used to say that shit all the time. Like, oh, he's an angry kid. He's gonna be mad all the time. He's gonna sit there. He's gonna try to fight. He's gonna try to And they weren't wrong. They weren't wrong. But at the same time, they're saying all this shit. But and I got older. I'm like, damn, hold on. You saying all this anger shit, but you couldn't even tell me where I got it from because I learned it from you. I didn't come out the womb angry. I was learning that they was handling their anger issues, taking it out on me. It's like that sometimes. So in turn, because that's the way they handled it and that's the way they treated me, I in turn would handle everyone around me from kindergarten up just with anger. I would sit there and try to put people in fear and put them in their place. And after a while, I was, it was funny. It's like when I started boxing, it was interesting because people were like, "Hey, man," they already knew I was already a crash out kid. So they're like, "Hey, you're basically attaining a superpower. You wouldn't want to abuse it on people who don't deserve it. You should probably only use this if you're being provoked." And I was like, you know what? That's some righteous shit. I kind of fuck with that, and I started leaning in that direction. And I started to, when I had a little more control from just training in general, just training and taking care of myself and my body, I started to realize how many people abuse their power in general. People just abuse the fact that they come from a crazy family of people that'll just jump you if you jump on the little bro. And people will just sit there and abuse that fact, walk through the streets like they can't be touched type shit. Some people do that shit. Some people just walk around with a gun, scared of fights their whole life. Some people scared to get their ass whooped, so they walk around with a gun their whole life. It's like that. Some people abuse it through fear, man. Like I said, you could be whoever you want. Because as much as like even to the day my mom died, and even to this day when my dad tried to talk about like how angry I can get, I'm like, yeah, but it's like, let's talk about where I got it from. And since then, it's like I stayed out of fights. Let's tell the truth about it. I've stayed out of fights. I've had a fight in fourth grade. Shout out to my guy Malcolm. I went head up with him, or not really, but I was kind of swinging on him while his back was turned. That was low key some bitch shit, but I kind of just snapped. I was swinging on him, and then I got in a fight with a dude. Like started like 2020, around the COVID time when that happened. when the pandemic was going down. So that's a whole nother conversation. But you know, my anger kind of got the best of me. I snapped on Bray. Bop, bop, you know what I'm saying? We just started going head up right there on the sidewalk. We almost got run over by cars. We almost fell inside of a construction site. We just dapped it up, went across the street. I tried to get him a beer. His friend is like, hey, he don't need no more to drink. I was like, word, I didn't know that. But that was a whole nother, but like I said, if I just sat there and like went based off of that, rather than defining myself, like I said, I got in a fight in 2004, fourth grade, 2020. So that's like a 16-year span where I just stayed out of street fights and stayed out of fights. People want to sit there and talk about anger, but I'm like, what are we talking about, bro? Because I'm sitting here erupting and telling somebody something passionately that they might need to hear. It's like the fact that I have the fact that I might have to smack the shit out of somebody just to get the point across is a problem to me, and I don't do that. I keep my hands to myself, so I'm not a victim of my anger. So people can say what they want, but that's why I'm over here creating the art. You understand? Creating the art and creating the content. I could be somewhere getting my point across by smacking people upside the head with the butt of a gun or something crazy. You know what I'm saying? Holding a knife to people's throat. I could be crazy like that. I could be crashing out like that. But like I said, from '04 to 2020, I kept my hands on myself. From 2020 up until now, I've kept my hands right here to myself, and all I've done is just create stuff off the phone, if not on the laptop, if not with the controller, game controller. All I've done is create. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? You can be whoever you want to be, bruh. I say this all the time, man. I'm trying to master peace within myself and just peace within my surroundings. You understand what I'm trying to say? Just peace in my surroundings, peace within myself. I know I can achieve that, but I know the universe is going to constantly test me, give me certain things. You know what I'm saying? Universe sent me a little YN that was trying to crash out on me the other day. He was sitting there trying to incite a reaction out of me. I pretended like I didn't hear him. I had my headphones in. I looked at him. I just smiled, nodded my head, went back to my seat. I started thinking to myself, I was like, you know what, man? I came here to do something. If he interrupts me while I'm trying to do my thing, you've crossed that line. Because the reason why I'm doing my thing is to keep myself out the street anyway. The reason why I go to work is to keep myself out the street anyway. So anybody that wants to try to reel me back into that, you're gonna get that side of me if we need to. You know what I'm saying? But like I said, he didn't do nothing. He would just all talk. He's over here talking by himself. But the funny thing about it was he had a whole lot of respect on the phone with the caseworker he needed to talk to. He had a whole lot of respect for all the white people inside the little library that was around. He had a whole lot more respect for them than he did for another black and brown person just in his vicinity. There's a raggedy looking white dude, homeless dude that walked up next to him. It's a dude, it's a male. He ain't say nothing to bruh. I was like, oh yeah, you letting all these white people around you slide, you letting all these innocent looking people slide, but the moment you see another brother, don't matter if it's black, brown, whatever, you're just gonna sit there and snap on them, start saying some crazy shit. My man is institutionalized, and it is what it is. That's not my problem. You understand? My man is institutionalized. He has some internalized, probably racism that he's dealing with. And like I said, I used to organize around this type of stuff, this type of work, and this type of education. But he has that within him. He's still struggling with it. And he tried to lash out on me, but I don't have to be a victim of it. You understand what I'm trying to say? I don't have to sit there and subjugate myself to go and head up with someone who might crash out, grab his gun, or get his homies just to prove a point. Because he's feeling insecure about himself, so he's crashing out on the next person that has more in relation, if not more in common with him. That's what's crazy to me. I was like, I probably got more in common with this brother right here, you know what I'm saying, than everyone else up in the fucking place, but you want to sit there and press on me type shit, pause. And that was crazy to me. So I'm like, you know what, man? I'm not going to make his problem my problems, man. He just got some shit he need to work on. When he comes next time, he going to come correct, pause. So it's like, next time he does that shit, hopefully he's respectable. If not, I might just have to have a conversation with him. Because I ain't going to lie, my ego almost kicked in. My ego almost kicked in and was like, we might have to just throw a couple right hands and uppercuts on Brett. But I was like, you know what, man? The man's a young boy. Let's not do that. And I'm proud of myself for keeping myself together. But like I said, you can be who you want to be. I want to be someone who's constantly refining the peace within myself, if not commanding the peace within my settings and surroundings. I'm trying to check as much bullshit before it starts. It's not easy, but I'm trying to check as much bullshit as, right before the shit erupts and starts. I'm trying to get it on lock like that. Get back to being happy with yourself, man. Because, I can even hear it in my voice now. My ego's flaring up just thinking about this young man. Because it's just like, damn, man, if it ain't him, it's going to be the next person that sit there and try to do something. And I purposely walk around without a weapon. Because I got this, man. I got the mental. I got the heart, even more importantly. So I'm just like, I got to deal with people head on, man. And if need be on a physical level, I'm trained to take people's weapons away from them anyway, too. But I hope it never comes to that point. Like I said, like I'm physically trained, whether it's the Jeet Kune Do or the Silat or the boxing, like I'm physically trained for this, and it's just like I don't go out of my way trying to harm people with it, but people come my way with that stuff, I'm gonna sit there and reverse it on you, bro. I love the human race, bro. Let's be honest about it. I love the human race, man. What you want me to say? What you want me to say? Hey, man, let's talk about that third point. And it comes to being happy with yourself. Let's start from the top real quick, though. Let's backtrack a little bit. Remind you, I said you aren't. Hold on, bro. Let's hold a little. Let's get back on that official shit, man. You aren't what you've been told about yourself from others, man. Remember that. People got a whole lot to say about you, but they could barely define themselves. If you know somebody who got a whole lot to say about you, but they could barely define themselves, don't even fucking talk to them people no more. Just move on. Just let them know, like, hey, man, you got a whole lot to say about me. Just tell the truth. Just like, hey, you got a whole lot to say about me, but you can barely talk about yourself. And you can even go as far to call them a goofball, but you can even just let them know, like, hey, man, that's some hurtful bullshit. I'm moving on. I don't need that. You doing some hurtful shit. I ain't want to be around no hurtful shit. I don't want to be around no negative shit. Let me know when you fix that, and maybe we can talk. But right now, I don't even want to deal with you. Just let people know straight up. There's nothing wrong with being honest. If you're honestly hurt, there's nothing wrong with letting people know you're honestly hurt. Because the thing is, if you're honestly hurt, if someone tries to make fun of you for being sensitive or hurt about it, I'm like, all right, I really don't need to be talking to you. I really don't. Because if you want to play with my sensitivity, you're gonna get the worst version of me. You already know. I don't even play with that shit. Anyway, you can be whoever you want to be. Like I said, man, don't let nobody define you, bro. Whoever you want to be today. This is what gets into the third point. This is where it gets real important. Because I say you can be whoever you want to be, but underneath that, I said who you want to be shouldn't be based off of hurting or bringing down others. People want to be the best version of themselves all the time, man. People trying to be the best version of themselves all the time. I ain't mad at that. And sometimes what they do on the daily is just they constantly check the bullshit, which is fair. But it's like now your whole being and your whole identity of yourself is like, I'm the guy who checks the bullshit. I'm gonna make sure I'm gonna make sure I'm always on top of things. I'm gonna make sure that I'm always checking people on this bullshit. People get socked if they talk to me crazy. People get threatened if they talk to me crazy. All this shit, people just go all the way haywire and they don't necessarily do it in a certain way. And it is what it is. But if being a better version of yourself means you have to bring others down, if being a better version of yourself means you have to hurt people in the long run, you really got to ask yourself. There's people right now, man, that to be the best version of themselves, it took a certain amount of money to feel good about themselves. It took a certain amount of money to get out of their specific situations or just get a little over on life. And the way they got that money sometimes was either drugging somebody in their own community or just not giving a care about people's addictions and just making sure they supplied that. So to some degree, there was hurting people in the long run. In the long run, sometimes generations, if not households at a time, just to elevate their money and status. And it's like that sometimes. I'm not one to judge, like I said. That type of shit being my surroundings and being my background, people got to maintain that way. Because on one hand, you got to think about this. With no remorse and no consequence, you know what I'm saying? Certain companies and pharmaceuticals will sit there and drug your household to death. They did it to my grandpa. They did it to my mom. They sat there and gave them pills all damn day. Hospitals, pharmaceuticals, shit like that. All these different type of companies, private companies and shit. They'll sit there and they'll do some criminal acts in a legal way, in a very legal way. Sit there and do some criminal acts, pharmaceutically, to families, and break them down and set them back for a long time. They'll have people dependent on certain things, certain little fake bandages to life, rather than giving, to keep them hooked, to keep them coming in for appointments, to keep making that insurance pay for stuff, et cetera, et cetera. You know what I'm saying? The little payments is always coming in rather than just giving them a quick solution, if not an option, to eat and have a better life and demand it. And that's why it's on you, because the world, if not the country you're in, it might not demand it of you. They might want you to be dependent on those hospital visits. They might want you to be dependent on that insurance being used. You understand? But that's a whole nother conversation, man. That's a whole nother conversation. If being the best version of yourself means that you got to constantly hurt people. See, here's the thing, man. I come from combat sports. So because of combat sports, it's a mutual understanding that like steel sharpens steel, but this matchup and this battle, this fight has to happen for us to keep excelling and moving forward in life. And then there's the payday, obviously. But like I said, I never fought professionally. The point I'm making is this, man. We gotta hurt people to the point where they don't feel like they're enough. If you gotta bring people down to the point where they don't feel like enough, just to elevate yourself to feel like you're enough, you gotta ask yourself what situation you're in, man. You gotta ask yourself what type of internment camp you really think you're living in, because they don't be like that, man. There was a video, excuse me, there was a movie about the Holocaust where they had these boxers that had to fight for their freedom. The motherfuckers that lost pretty much died, if not got sent to the chamber. Are you living like that? Like you over here having a mutual whatever with your opponent? Winner gets to survive, loser gets the chamber, etc. You know what I'm saying? Shit like that. Loser stays in the camp. Like, are you living like that? Or are you just living publicly where you can actually walk out the house and have a conversation with somebody? Can you do it like that? That's the thing, man. In the pursuit of being happy with yourself, if you got to bring someone else down or hurt someone else so that they don't feel like they're enough, you're doing all this shit ass backwards, man. You're doing it ass backwards, man. And like I said, that is the importance of like when you're not happy with yourself. There's nothing wrong with being sad. It's tricky when you're sad publicly or in front of people, especially loved ones. But it's like, bro, there's nothing wrong with just being in the background, dialing back, training, working on yourself in the background, if not with others that mutually understand that. But there's not gonna be no one else that's gonna sit there and help you and save you with this shit, bro. I'm telling you. I'm telling you. So be careful with that, man. Careful with that. Like I said, we over here on the professional stuff. This is the university mindset. You got to walk down the street, understand this, whether it's through trial and error or just simply understanding. Some people might hear the words and they get it, they sit there and just have a great understanding about it, which is dope. For me, man, it's just like I personally went through a combination of both, of just learning from others' mistakes and then my own personal trial and error. That's just me. But I will say, you know, that's what we're doing. University mindset, man. Keep that, I'm saying, certify yourself. Understand the degrees of things that you went through and the degrees of things that you can handle and understand as well. Go based off of that, man. Go based off of that. That's the university mindset. Keep the school of thought within yourself. You understand? Certify yourself, man. Don't bring others down. Don't let others define you either. It's that simple, all right? I'm a little over time right here, man. But like I said, I try to condense everything I did. Past 2 episodes that were kind of like little tester joints, they probably will never come out. This might be the real deal right here. You might start right here, all right? This might be the real 201. Boom. TTH 201. The Truancy 201. Hey, man. Love y'all. Appreciate y'all, man. Peace.